Welcome to Horror Audio Series, where the veil between worlds grows thin, and every whisper might be a warning. Here, we don't just tell horror stories. We summon them. Turn down the lights. Turn up your fear. The nightmare begins now.
Some deaths refuse to rest. Some spirits refuse to leave. When the veil thins between the worlds, the soul possessor awakens. Welcome to Soul Possessor.
Chapter 10. The Last Rite and the First Curse. The End. The forest was a tomb. Not a single leaf dared tremble. The trees stood petrified, bark curling like the skin of corpses left too long in the sun. No birds sang. Not even flies dared to buzz. There were no corpses, only dust, dry and brittle, and the lingering reek of fermented blood that clung to every branch like a silent curse. Christina stood alone before the entrance of the cave. It was not just a cave. It was the heart gate of blood, the place of origin, the black mouth of the world where Saturnus had first been sealed. It pulsed faintly, not with light, but with a grotesque heat that seemed to breathe, in and out, as if the stone itself had lungs. Around her feet, drops of blood moved. They did not fall. They slithered backward, recoiling from the air like worms burrowing into familiar rot, crawling toward the cave with purpose. They remembered. They belonged. And she knew. He was calling, waiting, watching. In Christina's right hand, the wooden knife pulsed, its once dead bark now slick with her blood, her essence that had soaked deep into its veins. It was no longer just a blade. It was her offering, her oath, her final bond. She stepped inside. There was no light, not even darkness. Just a throbbing murk, a suffocating void thick with groans that oozed from the cracks in the cave walls, like the labored breath of a beast too large to die. With every step she took, the stone floor beneath her feet hissed. It was not stone anymore, but something alive, blistering, raw. It sizzled beneath her soles like human skin roasted over fire. The stench clawed at her throat. Iron, rotting gums, feathers charred into soot. And then he appeared. Not as a shadow, not as a whisper, but in form, flesh, horror, satanas, a grotesque monument of suffering, towering in the darkness. His entire body was a pulsating, glistening mass of fused faces, human faces, twitching, weeping, silently screaming. They were plastered across his body like tumors, merging and unmerging, blistering into one another. From his forehead, an eye, fresh, embryonic, still slick with amniotic fluid, rolled restlessly in its socket. Below his chin, a mouth stretched open, split wide from ear to ear, filled with baby teeth, rows of them, yellow and jagged like chewed chalk. He exhaled, and the air turned rancid, a stench of spoiled milk, the unmistakable smell of a strangled infant's final breath, mixed with something older, like spoiled milk curdled with ancient hatred. Christina clenched the wooden knife tighter. Her fingers dug into the blood-slicked grip until her knuckles cracked. And then he spoke. Christina. His voice was not from the throat. It came from the folds of flesh, from every face sewn into him, speaking in unison. You've grown. Your flesh. It smells richer than your mother's. Ripe. She did not answer. She did not blink. Satanas crept forward, not walking, not gliding. Crawling. He had no arms. Only 4 legs, sprouting from where a pelvis once was. Legs like skinless dogs, twitching violently, claws dragging across the floor with a wet sound like tongues licking stone. You know where I was born? His smile split wider. From the screams of children buried alive. From the torn fingernails of mothers scratching the coffin walls with hope. From people like you, good, kind, pitifully weak. You let your friends die so you could run. He dragged himself closer. You let Lucy bleed. You let Joe burn. You watched your parents become ash. And now here you are, in white robes, with a bloody toy knife. You think you're the hero? Christina's body trembled, not with fear, but rage. Then, with a sickening squelch, Satanas' skull split down the middle like a peeled fruit. And inside, Lucy's face, bleeding, smiling, still warm. You will never be worthy to live in my place, the demon hissed through her mouth. Christina screamed, no, roared, and slashed. The wooden knife carved across Satanas' chest. Black blood erupted, boiling as it touched the air, thick like burnt oil. But he didn't recoil. He didn't scream. He just laughed. And then he struck. One clawed toe, sharp as glass, shot out and stabbed into her chest, straight into her heart. Christina gasped. Blood burst from her mouth in a crimson arc. She stumbled, the blade slipping from her fingers, clattering on the stone. She collapsed. The cave began to darken. Not from the absence of light, but from the swallowing of light itself. Satanas stepped closer, each step pressing shadows deeper into her vision. Die, Christina. His voices overlapped again, sickeningly gentle. You're not here to win. You're here because your guilt won't let you die. Let me help. The walls responded. Faces emerged from the stone. Her father, mouth wide, as if frozen mid-scream. His burning silhouette etched into her memory. Her mother, eyes blank, tongue limp like dead meat. Lucy, bleeding from every orifice, whispering faintly. You failed us. I'm not the savior, she said, teeth red with blood. I'm the survivor. And you're just a corpse that doesn't know it's dead. The blade shimmered, red, alive. She raised it and charged. Christina swung the wooden knife. The blade slashed deep, opening Satanas from chin to sternum. A geyser of black rot sprayed from the wound, blood that stank of grave mold and scorched teeth. But instead of shrieking, the demon leaned forward, lips parting into a smile wide enough to split his cheeks. And in that moment, her own face emerged from his torn chest. Identical, but pale as wax and hollow-eyed. It grinned. I am you, Christina. It whispered in a voice that curled like poison. Then, with a brittle pop, so soft it could have been a blood blister bursting, the wooden knife cracked down the center. Christina froze. A tremor ran through her hand. The weight of everything, every death, every sacrifice, suddenly hung from the broken blade. Satanas loomed. You thought your blood was pure? He hissed. Your blood is a river of guilt, filthy, weak. Yours is the blood of a coward. He opened his mouth. Rows of teeth, thousands, rippled backward like shark fins. A force dragged Christina forward. She resisted, fingers clawing at the floor. But the stone turned to mud, warm and crawling. Pale, decaying hands erupted from the ground, seizing her wrists, her ankles, her ribs. Each touch came with a voice. Why didn't you die instead? I burned for you. My child, it hurts. It hurts? The hands weren't just gripping. They were remembering. Every scream, every plea she'd tried to bury. They rose like ghosts with no eyelids, staring into her soul. Her strength collapsed. Her will frayed. Her thoughts became static. Her name, foreign. She was naked in a black room inside her own mind, curled like a child. No hands to hold, no light to follow. just the rhythmic, wet sound of Satana's chewing on what remained of her. Outside, reality twisted. Satanas had devoured half of her. Her legs were gone, melted into his throat. Her torso remained, flailing like a blood-drenched banner in a storm of decay. Her arms bled in sync with her heart, if it was still beating at all. He was about to bite the rest. But then, she remembered ashes. Not just anyone's. Her mother's ashes. Joe's ashes. Lucy's ashes. And then her own. The ashes she created when she burned her heart to forge the wooden knife. Fire. Blood. Faith. 3 elements, welded into a single spark buried deep in her gut. Christina's eyes flew open, and from her chest, a scream, not from her throat, but from every cell left in her body. "You may devour my body, but you will never devour my will." The broken wooden knife, blood-slicked and dying, jerked violently in midair, and flew back into her hand. Her blood, still pumping, with that singular spark of defiance, poured from the cracked hilt, not just dripping, but pouring in veins, wrapping around her arm like sentient roots. The veins tore through her flesh, replacing muscles, latching to bone. Her blood was no longer red. It was crimson flame. Christina stood up again. Her spine snapped into place with a sound like dry branches breaking. Her heart gave a final thunderous beat, and a jet of blood fire exploded from the crown of her head. She was not human anymore. She was something else. The wooden knife began to shift, its bark splitting, the blade extending, pulsing like an organ. It wasn't wood now. It was living blood, solidified into a weapon forged from pain and sacrifice. The whole blood knife. The blade inhaled. Its edge glowed like the membrane of a newborn's heart. Bone spikes erupted along the hilt. Each swing would cost her a year of life, a price she no longer feared. She raised it high. She looked at Satanas, and for the first time he backed away. His laughter stuttered. His many faces twisted in dread. "No!" he bellowed. "I am the source! I am the first! I am eternal!" Christina didn't answer. She didn't need to. She ran forward, feet leaving streaks of burning blood across the stone. The whole blood knife pierced Satanas from mouth to gut. And with that final slash, the world cracked. A scream burst from the wound, not a scream of pain, but a holy wail, the sound of 1,000 souls being freed from one gaping prison. From within the slash, light erupted. Not golden, not white, but red, raw, human red, like blood, being reborn. The earth shook. The cave roared. Satnas's form collapsed, chunks of flesh and whispering faces tumbling into the red rift. He was sucked in, piece by shrieking piece, until only a final face remained. It was hers. "I am you," it wept. Christina looked down, lips torn, voice no longer a voice but a tremble of will. "No, I am the one who forgives." And then she fell. The fire inside her extinguished, and the silence was complete. The next morning, the 2 ancient masters found her. Christina lay in the blackened heart of the forest, her body pale, motionless, surrounded by scorched roots and patches of earth still smoking. On her chest, a single bloody petal rested, a fragment of the whole blood knife that had shattered after the final blow. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't entirely alive either. The old man didn't cry. He merely bowed. The blind woman stood silently beside him, her veiled eyes fixed on Christina's body as though seeing something no one else could, because Christina was no longer the girl who had wept in the fog-shrouded village. She was something in between. The last vessel, the last scar, the last bridge. 3 days passed, And on the third day, the first rain fell. But this rain did not cleanse. It did not give life. It only soaked into the ash, deepening the stench of charred flesh, making the scent of death more tangible, as if the land itself refused to forget. In a quiet stone chamber beneath the rebuilt altar, Christina finally opened her eyes. There were no tears. There was no light in them, only the ashen gray of someone who had died and returned wearing her own corpse. The masters sat beside her. She said nothing. She ate slowly from the bowl they gave her, porridge cooked with spring water, forest herbs, and a drop of the old man's own blood, cut from his palm in silent offering. No words were needed, until the blind woman gently reached for Christina's wrist, the same wrist Satnus had nearly ripped apart, and whispered like the rustling of dying leaves, "You are no longer human, but you are not demon either. You are the bridge of blood." Christina didn't answer. She lowered her gaze to her palm, where the bloodwood had burned its final mark into her flesh. A dark red sigil, as if a root had grown into her bones and decided to stay. Even when she closed her fist, she felt it there, alive. That night she burned her mother's grave again, but this time not to bury her deeper. This time to release her. The wind scattered the ashes into the forest. Red smoke drifted upward, mixing with the mist, disappearing into the trees like a final breath. Christina watched without blinking, her face unreadable, until, for the first time, she smiled. Not because of peace, but because now she knew. She was no longer her mother's daughter. She was no one's child. She was the one who carried the debt of all blood. The next morning they left. Christina led the way, her figure wrapped in a cloak of stitched animal skins, her hair tangled and wild. Around her wrist, a rosary of bone beads. Around her neck, a shard of red wood, reforged from the shattered knife into a seal, the last relic of her own blood-wrought blade. The two masters walked behind her. They said little. They were just shadows now, watchers of the path she must walk alone. Their journey took them through a dead village, where flies swarmed over bloated corpses and the roof sagged with mold. Blood had dried into the soil like ink on forgotten pages. Christina didn't flinch. She drew the bone blade tied at her hip. With one motion, she marked her own forehead, drawing a line of blood, her seal. She stepped into the ruined shrine, where something ancient and foul still clung to the altar like a shiver. A child screamed. A shadow moved. A slash cut the air. A soul was freed. Christina emerged without a word. She placed a 5-petaled flower, drawn in blood, beside the child's pillow. Each petal bore an invisible name. Lucy, Joe, her mother, Master Lee, the priestess, those who had died for her. And so, the whispers began to spread. Throughout villages and towns, across forests and valleys, a rumor took root. There is a girl, hair like soot, eyes like ghosts, carrying a blade that breathes. Wherever she walks, the wind screams. Ghosts scatter. The cursed weep. But none dare approach her, for she is both girl and blood. Christina did not look up. She walked, steady as a curse written into the earth. And sometimes, in the silence between towns, when the fog settled and the world forgot her name, the wind would whisper softly in her ear. A broken lullaby, warm as a dying flame. My child, if you must walk in darkness, then burn. Burn forever in the hearts of others, in the hearts of others. That was the end of Soul Possession. Thank you for listening till the last whisper. But remember, evil never ends. It only changes its face. More tales of horror, curses, and shadows await you on this channel. If you enjoyed the darkness, subscribe for the next story that might find you. Until then, don't look back. Something might be following.
Thank you for listening to Horror Audio Series. If the silence feels heavier tonight, if the darkness lingers longer than usual, you've already opened the door, and something may have followed you through. Don't forget to subscribe, because next time, it might be your story we tell. Sleep, if you can.